Nkululeko Poya's career at the Railway Safety Regulator has been derailed. He has resigned while on suspension. Poya was suspended in November 2017, facing 14 charges, including alleged misconduct and abuse of power. He challenged the disciplinary inquiry at the Labour Court last year. It was reportedly dismissed with costs. The regulator's chairperson, Kwinda, joins us now to discuss this. Good evening, Dr. Kwinda. Thanks very much for your time. So tell us, was Mr. Poya, did he jump or was he pushed?
Yeah, it's not, I think he is pushed in, well, he is pushed because the disciplinary hearing was still ongoing. Today was supposed to be the last day of the hearing, and he resigned yesterday evening. When I saw the email, I think he resigned yesterday evening. And today we're expecting that the disciplinary hearing was going to be concluded.
So why did you push him?
We didn't push him, he jumped. I think I'm wrong when I'm saying he was pushed, but I think he jumped because the hearing was supposed to be concluded today, and now it couldn't sit because he has resigned. He's no more an employee of the regulator. So in that way, he has jumped out, I would assume, yes.
Well, he was facing 14 charges for gross misconduct, abuse of power, dishonesty, dereliction of duty, defying the authority of the board. Just take us through some of the most serious charges she was facing in plain and simple language.
Well, they're all serious. From the board's perspective, the board felt all of them were serious. That is why they were. That's why he was charged. Maybe if I may highlight the few, is misrepresentation. Because at that position of a CEO, you're always supposed to be honest and trustworthy of the board and the public as such, given the position that he holds. So misrepresentation is a big offense. That's one of them. And secondly, when you are not able to be a good steward of public purse, that's a very big issue as well, because also the regulator under his leadership, he has not been able to look after the finances of the regulator in the manner that he should. There's been a number of, huge amount of expenditure that had been incurred that we believe that should not have been incurred. Had he been taken full responsibility and taken his duties seriously in line with the Public Finance Management Act. So in that way, the board, after the investigation was concluded, it was important that the board take disciplinary actions against him. And at this stage, I would say that personally, I am disappointed that he couldn't wait for the outcome of the DC process. We were looking forward to get that to get a sanction from there, which at the moment now we couldn't. And but at the same time, I don't think it is the end of it all.
What are you planning to do next? Now that he's, of course, no longer your employee.
In some of these matters that, amongst those 14 charges, there are matters that can be taken through the civil route, and obviously the board will follow that route, because I don't think it would be fair for us to just drop everything like that, given the fact that he has been on suspension for around about 18 months, and during all of this process there's a lot of money that we as the board have spent in trying to make sure that he gets a fair hearing in terms of the disciplinary, that his side of the story is heard, and that the entire process is done procedurally, and that we follow all the processes and procedures to give him an opportunity to explain his case.
Now, when Mr. Poya approached the Labour Court last year, he admitted culpability for some of the charges that were brought against him. And among the admissions was unauthorized private investigations aimed at board members as well as a journalist. Would you expand on those?
Of course, in the Labour Court, he did admit that he did that, though he put up his own reasons why he did it. And from the board's perspective, we do not believe that whatever justification that he could put or whatever reasons that he can come up with, we do not believe that that act in itself, is displaying him as fit for the position that he was holding. So that has been on the newspaper, that has been in the public, and it also happened, I think, just before the era of the current board. But it is an issue, of course, and it talks to the character. It talks to whether should a person of that stature be trusted with a public office. So it's all the questions that we have, and it's this reason that he was subjected to a disciplinary inquiry so that he can explain himself.
Well, one can't imagine the regulator functioning properly or normally under these circumstances. So how has this episode affected the work of the regulator?
To the contrary, Vuyo, since the suspension of Mr. Poya in the organization, the board appointed the acting CEO to make sure that the organization continues to run. So the organization has been running smoothly, and when he was put on precautionary suspension, there's a lot that was uncovered during the investigation. And to the extent that in order to stabilize the organization, the RSR, because the organization was not run properly, I would say that now, because my statement is now backed up by the investigation that we conducted, that the organization was not run very well. The organization was financially not stable. The organization would go through phases where salaried employees would not be paid because there was no money. But ever since he left, the board embarked on a recovery strategy. We did a turnaround plan, which we communicated with the shareholder, the Department of Transport, and we got an understanding with them. We put in controls and means to put the organization back on track. And of all the steps that we had put in that recovery plan, they've been successfully executed with the current acting CEO and the management that is in place, whilst the CEO has been on suspension. So for that reason, the issue of the CEO being on suspension has not really affected the organization. To the contrary, the organization has functioned much, much, much better with him not being in the reign of the organization. And there's a lot that has been achieved ever since he left the organization. From where I see it, or from where the board's perspective, we're looking into the results of the organization in terms of performance. The organization has performed very well, though we are waiting for the audit by the Auditor General in terms of how the outcome are. But from what we've been monitoring as the board and from what management has been submitting to us and what we've been monitoring so far, we are pleased that the organization is now back on track compared to what it was before.
With respect, though, Dr. Kwinda, I mean, as much as you as the board may pat yourselves in the back for having uncovered what you say you've been able to uncover in the time that Mr. Poya has been suspended, it does also point a finger at you that all these things you are saying were swept under the carpet actually happened while right under your noses.
Well, I would say, of course, there's always been a board at the RSR, so I would say so. Though if I were to speak for the current board, I would say the CEO that has been suspended, we suspended him at exactly 11 months that we've been in place as the board. So he worked with us or reported to this board at least for 11 months. And at the 11th month, that is when we recommended to the minister to suspend him, because we could see that things were not happening in the manner that the organization should be run. Of course, you would understand that the board is not executive, and therefore you come to an organization occasionally, once in 3 months, so you're not able to see everything all at once when you come into an organization at a non-executive level. For that reason, it took us almost 10 months, I would say, to see that he was not leading the organization to the direction that the board desired. And that is why he was then suspended. So, of course, all of those things that have been uncovered are things that have happened in the past. And I would say, yes, there was a board. I wouldn't therefore say that there was no board. There was a time where there wasn't any board. But I would speak for the current board and say we've tried our best to ensure that RSR as a state entity is run properly.
Dr. Kwinda, thanks very much for your time this evening. She is, of course, the chairperson of the Railway Safety Regulator.